Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Today, we're going to be continuing our journey through the legacy of Universal Monsters horror movies with 1942's The Ghost of Frankenstein. Yes. So, Ghost of Frankenstein is, of course, a direct sequel to 1938's Son of Frankenstein, this time featuring Sir Cedric Hardwicke as the other son of Frankenstein, Ludwig von Frankenstein. Bela Lugosi is back as Igor, apparently not as dead as we thought from the previous movie. The monster returns, this time played by Lon Chaney Jr., also not as dead as we thought after plunging into the sulfur pit of the previous movie. And strangely, a couple of council members in the town of Frankenstein who were very clearly murdered by the monster in the previous movie are also back, apparently alive again somehow. Yeah, Universal apparently said, well, no, those characters are back because it establishes a more solid continuity between the films, which is what viewers have wanted, so that's why they're back. It's like, yeah, but they all died in the previous movie. Like, aren't we going to explain how they're back? No. Oh, okay then. Anyway, Ghost of Frankenstein, today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Yeah, it's like, well, okay, you say you want to establish continuity, but that is contradictory to the continuity. It's like, no, it's not. I don't know. Anyway, we're not going to complain too much because it's great to see Bela Lugosi back as Igor, and great, of course, to see the monster back, played by, yet another legend of the Universal Monsters world, Lon Chaney Jr., son of the famous Man of a Thousand Faces, Lon Chaney Sr. from the silent era. The only explanation we're given for how Igor managed to survive the hail of bullets that supposedly killed him at the end of the previous one is, Igor not so easy to kill. Okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, they did hang him once before, and he survived that, so I guess it's not that big of a stretch, at least in his case. As for the two council members that mysteriously returned from the dead, who knows, who cares, they're only in a couple of scenes at the beginning anyway. So at the end of Son of Frankenstein, Wolf and his family left town after having resolved all of the chaos that they had unintentionally helped to bring about, and gave the estate of Castle Frankenstein to the townspeople to, quote, do with what they will. Well, the movie opens with the townspeople holding a big meeting to decide what they're going to do with the castle. And we see Dwight Fry, good old Dwight Fry, who of course played Fritz in the original 1931 movie, as one of the townsfolk who suggests, let's blow it up. Let's just blow up the castle and be done with it, and we can all get on with our lives and never have to worry about it again. So Igor, of course, having survived, is living in the castle and sees the mob of angry villagers coming with their torches and dynamite, and as they proceed to try to blow up parts of the castle by planting dynamite all over the place, he's up on one of the parapets dropping boulders on them and almost kills a few of them, but ultimately realizes, yeah, he's beaten. There's no way he can stop these villagers from their pyrotechnic intent. So he retreats down to the bowels of the castle as it proceeds to be blown up and crumble down all around him. He manages to make his way down to the bottom, and he sees the remnants of the sulfur pit, just a big block of hardened sulfur, and the explosion shakes loose some chunks of it, and the monster is there. And he sees the monster's hand move slightly and realizes the monster is still alive. So he helps get him out of the sulfur pit, and they decide to leave town. And he's like, well, there's nothing here for us anymore, but I think I know someone who might be able to help you. The other son of Frankenstein, Ludwig von Frankenstein. Igor knows where Ludwig is these days, so he heads off with the monster in tow to go and find him. So the town where Ludwig von Frankenstein is, they have no idea about the history of the Frankenstein family. He's very much distanced himself from it. He, like the rest of his family, is a scientist, a doctor, a surgeon. And he has just perfected this new process where he can actually remove a brain from a person's body, perform whatever brain surgery needs to be performed on it, and then put it back in. So Igor and the monster show up, and immediately all hell breaks loose. And in the most innocent of ways, too, because the monster sees a little girl being bullied by some bigger kids, and she's wanting to play with her ball, and the bigger kids take her ball, it's like a tether ball, and throw it up in the air, and it lands on a roof and gets hooked around this chimney so she can't reach it. The monster just kind of walks over, the other kids run away in terror, but the little girl stays, and she just looks up at him and says, "Are you a giant?" And I have to say, this little girl is the most precious, most adorable thing you've ever seen. She's so tiny, and like every time she says anything, your heart just melts. She's so adorable. She's looking up at the monster, and then she says, "Can you help me get my ball?" So the monster, I mean, who's gonna refuse such pure cuteness? So he picks her up and proceeds to head up the stairs and up the wall to get the ball. Meanwhile, the villagers just see this huge monster walking off with this little girl, and they start chasing after him and trying to stop him, and he knocks a couple people off the roof as they're chasing them, and then he gets the ball and gives it back to the little girl, and then brings her back down and hands her to her father. However, because I guess he injured or killed a couple of people in the process, the monster is arrested, put in chains. Igor is like, just calm down, let them take you, and we'll see if we can figure this out. So the monster calms down, and he just, lets them take him away. He just kind of gets overwhelmed by villagers, and he's not able to fight them all off, but they take him off, and they put him in chains. Meanwhile, Igor goes to see Ludwig and tells him about what's happened, and essentially blackmails him into helping, saying, well, you have a nice little medical practice here. It would be a shame if everyone knew about your family's history. You would not want that getting out now, would you? And he's like, no. It's like, well, then you better help me. So he's like, fine, I'll help you. He goes off to do a medical and mental examination of the monster to determine his mental health. Now, the interesting thing is, the villagers have no knowledge of the Frankenstein monster or anything like that. They think he's just a big man who's mentally challenged, essentially. So essentially what ends up happening is the monster is put in Ludwig's care, because Ludwig actually runs a mental hospital. So in addition to being a surgeon, he's also running this mental hospital. So he kind of takes the monster under his care under the pretense of him being a mentally challenged man that he might be able to help. Ludwig feels that there's nothing he can do to help the monster. He's just a raging beast at this point, and there's nothing that he can do to help him. So he decides that he's going to destroy the monster. He says, well, just as my father made him by putting him together from various parts, I can unmake him by reversing the process through medical dissection. His assistant, Dr. Boehmer, played by Lionel Atwill, by the way, so Lionel Atwill is back but as a completely different character, refuses to have anything to do with that. Now, Ludwig has got a hold of the notes of not only Henry Frankenstein, but Wolf Frankenstein as well. So he has quite a lot of material that he's been going through and studying the work and how the body was created in the first place, how his brother revived it, and realizes that the fundamental problem was originally Henry Frankenstein had intended to put an intelligent brain in the body of the monster, but due to the mistake that Fritz made, had an abnormal brain put into the body. So he's thinking, well, if I put an intelligent brain in the body of the monster, then that could solve everything. Then he'll be fine. He'll just be an ugly man. So as he's going through the notes, we actually see footage from the original 1931 Frankenstein. It's kind of funny because we actually end up seeing Dwight Fry twice in this movie. First as the townsperson at the beginning that says we should just blow up the castle, and then again as Fritz in scenes from the first movie. And then later, Ludwig sees a ghostly apparition of his father, but strangely enough, his father is played by Sir Cedric Hardwicke again, just all ghostly and ethereal, so you can't really see him clearly, but it's clearly him. So he's seeing his father as himself as an older man. So in this vision, he gets the idea that maybe if he put an intelligent brain into the body, it would fix everything. Now, the doctor's other assistant, Dr. Kettering, dies, so he thinks, well, what if we put Kettering's brain? Then he'll have like a very intelligent brain in the body of the monster. Now, when Igor catches wind of this, he's like, well, why don't you put my brain in there? Because I have this broken neck body that doesn't work right, even, more so after being riddled with bullets. It would give me a strong body. And Ludwig's just like, no way, I'm not putting a scheming, conniving brain like yours into the body of a giant. You'd be unstoppable. So Igor goes to Dr. Boehmer. Now, Dr. Boehmer has agreed to assist with the brain transplant operation, but Igor convinces Dr. Boehmer to put his brain into the body of the monster. So it seems like everybody has a different idea about whose brain is going to go into the monster. Even the monster himself, when Igor explains to him what's going to happen, he says, my brain in your body, you understand? Then we be together forever. And the monster understands what's going to happen and how it's going to help him. So he goes off and finds the little girl that he befriended at the beginning and brings the little girl to Dr. Frankenstein. And all he does is he points to the little girl, to her head, and then points to his head. And they realize, like, oh my God, he wants the brain of the little girl to be put into his body. So the monster wants the little girl's brain. Ludwig wants to put Dr. Kettering's brain in there. And Igor wants his own brain to go into the body of the monster. Which brain will it be? It's the battle of the brains. The thing I couldn't help but think, though, throughout the course of this is, well, if they take out the monster's brain, then everything that is him will be gone. And it will be whoever is put in there. I mean, I guess it all comes down to, where is the soul? Where is the mind stored? Well, it's the brain. So if you put someone else's brain in the same body, that person is gone. They're hamburger now. So I don't know. Apparently the monster didn't quite get that part of it. So overall, this is a fun little addition to the saga. I mean, it's certainly great to see Bela back as Igor. Lon Chaney didn't really get very much to do in terms of acting as far as his performance as the monster. He's essentially just a mindless, lumbering beast with a few nice little tender scenes with the little girl and a few scenes where he's kind of communicating what the monster wants. But really, he doesn't get very much to do. He doesn't emote much, certainly not on the same level that Boris did. And mostly he's just kind of expressionless, blank, lumbering around. And for the most part, for the rest of the Frankenstein monster's appearances in the series, that's kind of what you get. He was just basically turned into a rampaging beast, a mindless killing machine, and very far removed from, of course, what the monster was in the original stories. This was also kind of where Universal started to cut corners a lot with the production costs of these. Ghost of Frankenstein was made almost immediately after The Wolfman from 1941. In fact, Lon Chaney was cast as the monster when he was working on The Wolfman, and a lot of the sets from The Wolfman are actually reused in Ghost of Frankenstein. So, yeah, they were definitely starting to cut corners and spend less money on them. Also, in terms of running time, this one's really short. It's only 67 minutes long, so just a hair over an hour. So, hey, if you don't have a lot of spare time, the Universal Monster movies, you can get through quite a few of them in a very short span of time. You can watch 2 or 3 of them in the length of one modern movie. So this, of course, was the last of the solo Frankenstein movies. The next time the monster would appear would be in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which is, of course, the first part of the Monster Mash trilogy, which was Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, and House of Dracula. But we'll talk about those another time. So, that is pretty much it for Ghost of Frankenstein. As I say, it's pretty short, and there's not like a hugely complicated plot there. Not much to go into. But definitely fun. I mean, it's interesting to see Lon Chaney as the monster. Glenn Strange really became the standard go-to to play the monster in most of the movies that would follow. The next one, actually, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, we have Bela Lugosi, which is kind of funny because, of course, as you may have guessed, it's Igor's brain that gets transferred into the monster. So it's kind of funny that we have Bela just playing the monster in the next movie. In this one, he actually does speak with the voice of Igor after the brain transplant, but it's still Lon Chaney in the makeup, but doing spot-on perfect lip sync to the dialogue of Bela Lugosi. Very good, actually. Good job on both of their parts there. So in the next one, of course, we have Bela taking over fully as the monster, but only that one time. Following that, it would be Glenn Strange in all the remaining appearances. So that's it for Ghost of Frankenstein. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to add this to your collection, I will, of course, include Amazon links in the description below, both for the Frankenstein Legacy Collection and for the Universal Monsters 30 movie collection. So whichever way you'd like to get it, enjoy. And thank you very much for your support. All right, so thanks for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors. Be sure to catch me on Twitch. I stream just about every day, and I'll see you next time. Until then, sayonara. This time featuring Sir Sedgwick pyrotechnic intent. So he retreats down to the bowels.